YouTube Ozzico in the Goat House is back, and the NFL offseason is starting to kick into gear. The NFL franchise tag window is opening up today. It's actually opening in 25 minutes from me talking right now, and then it'll run through March 7th. And in this video, I'm going to predict who I think will get the franchise tags, which tag they're going to get, how much it'll cost. At the end, we'll talk about guys that also could get the tag, but I'm not predicting to get it though. So I do this every single year. We'll grade the tags once that window closes. We're going to grade every free agency signings like we always do. So join us. Cannot wait. We already got a bunch of content on the channel. Check out those videos. You won't be disappointed. Like, subscribe to notifications on. Follow us on Twitter. A lot of talk on there. Live news, rumors, updates, Twitter subs. Get some bonus content. Spreadsheets I've been making for those guys too. Top 50 free agents. Twitter, link pin in the comments. Discord, link pin in the comments. Our sponsors, GLD Shop, Liquid IV, Walk the Mock with some codes. Links pinned in the comments. Let's start with Lamar Jackson. Was talking a little bit about this on Twitter this morning. I am fully expecting this. I'm fully expecting Lamar Jackson to get the exclusive franchise tag with the Baltimore Ravens, and that is different than your normal tag, which is considered the non-exclusive tag, and we'll talk about some guys getting that, of course. So for the exclusive tag, it is actually a projected price right now, unlike the other tags, and it's a maximum of $45.2 million. Why that is, and they haven't determined it yet. It takes the top 5 players at the position, so in this case quarterback, their salaries, and they calculate what the cost is, the price is, but they wait until April to do that. So in this case here, what will count on the Ravens books is the normal tag, which is the 32.416, which we'll get to with some other quarterbacks. That's what it'll count towards until you get to that April decision on what the exclusive tag will cost, which it should be around that range of 45.2. So the difference between the exclusive tag and the non-exclusive tag, which is your normal franchise tag, is not just the price. Obviously, this one's a little more expensive, but with the exclusive tag, other teams cannot negotiate. They cannot negotiate with that player. With the regular tag, teams can negotiate. Teams have a chance to match. They get 2 first-round picks if the other team ends up signing. But in this case, teams will not be able to negotiate with Lamar Jackson. The Ravens will work towards signing a long-term extension/deal. They have until July 15th to do that. But if they feel like, they can't reach an extension agreement, they very well could trade him, and then they'll agree on compensation like a normal trade, where the non-exclusive tag, if a team signs them and they say the Ravens don't match, the team has to give up 2 first-round picks. So Lamar Jackson's worth more than that. Like, usually that's pretty good value for guys on franchise tags, but not Lamar Jackson. So that's why they don't want that non-exclusive tag. They want that exclusive tag. In my opinion, I'm expecting this. So that's what it would look like. So it's a little bit, somewhat of a unique situation with the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. I'm predicting this to happen. I think it's very, very likely. So talk about some other quarterbacks here. Daniel Jones and the Giants. I'm predicting get the non-exclusive tag, which is your normal franchise tag. And the price for that for quarterbacks is $32.416 million. So that is a lot for Daniel Jones, but at first the talks were around $35 million. Now it's kind of pushing towards 45, which is absolutely ridiculous. So the Giants almost have no choice but to slap the franchise tag on Daniel Jones, because it's a question if they want to pay over $35 million, but then when we're talking 45, they definitely do not want to pay that. Maybe they wanted to franchise tag Saquon Barkley, because that's a pretty reasonable price. So it is a tricky situation for the Giants. The good thing here is you're not stuck with them long term. That's the positive, because you still don't know what Daniel Jones is about. So signing him long term, that 35 plus per year long term, that's a very risky. So it's kind of a 1-year trial, which it kind of feels like Daniel Jones might want this right now, because if he's asking a ridiculous amount, it just feels like usually in those situations, the quarterbacks want the franchise tag, or they're okay with it. So maybe he thinks he can play even better. He's banking on himself. He can play even better than he did last year, and he stepped up last year, and then earn even more when the salary cap once again goes up. So I guess it makes sense. A big gamble on himself. The downside of this for the Giants is, Saquon Barkley would have loved to franchise tag him. A 1-year deal for a running back for $10 million is a great running back, is fantastic. So that's a downside. Another downside is with the franchise tag, That number 32.416, that is the full cap hit for this year, because when you make a long-term deal with the guy, you can kind of spread the cap hits out. It doesn't have to be set things like all on 1 year or every year. So the Giants have a good amount of cap space. That's the good thing, like $47 million, but it takes a chunk out of it with this franchise tag. So they'll tag him, and they'll probably continue to still work out an extension. I think all these guys will. But if he's pushing for even over 35, but if he's really pushing for 45, then he's pushing it. He's pushing it there. So I'm expecting a tag, and I would not be surprised at all if he is playing on that tag at the 32.416. So you see there's some positives, there's some negatives. They're in a situation where they almost have no choice. Like maybe they want to go Barkley, but we might have no choice. Maybe you should say that. Maybe you could let him walk, but then what do you do at quarterback? There are some other options out there, but I guess some tough decisions for the New York Football Giants there. And then I guess somewhat similar here because it's a quarterback on the non-exclusive tag, and it's the same exact price here, 32.416. But I do think it's a little different because the Seahawks, for some time have been working on an extension, like a long-term deal before free agency for Geno Smith. And things were positive, and it sure sounded like he's going to be playing for the Seahawks next year. And I still kind of think that's the case. The window is opening. It's going to be open by the time I'm done talking in this video. It's opening very soon. And teams don't have to slap the franchise tag on the guy right when it opens. They have until March 7th. So the Seahawks probably aren't going to do it on Geno Smith right away, possibly. So they're going to still try to extend him. If they can't extend him by March 7th, then they'll put the tag on him, and they'll continue to work on that extension. So, like I said, I think it's a little different because Daniel Jones, I think, could very well play on that tag. I'm not really expecting from Geno Smith. It's a tough prediction, actually, because, again, the Seahawks could very well reach that long-term agreement before they have to put the tag on Geno Smith. I can definitely see that. It's very realistic here. Or they can place it on him, and if they place it on him, either way, I'm expecting them to reach a long-term deal. It's not going to be super long, probably. Maybe it's 3 years. Maybe it's 2. I'm going to say it's probably 3. But so that's something to watch out for. Possible before the tag, or maybe a buzzer beater before March 7th, they reach in a long-term deal, so there's no tag on Geno Smith. Or they tag him, and I think somewhat quickly they figure it out on a long-term deal. So even though I'm predicting tag, it's possible they reach a deal before, but the tag's not going to last. They're gonna, when you reach a deal, you get rid of the tag and you reach a deal, a new contract. So I'm kind of expecting that. They just kind of want to take him off the free agency market there. So again, kind of the same tag, same price as Daniel Jones, but a little different of a situation. Chiefs, Orlando Brown Jr., who got the tag last year, so this actually would be his second tag. So it is a raise. You take the last year salary for him, which was the tag, and it's 120% of that. So that would come out to be $19.994 million for Orlando Brown Jr. in the Chiefs. And this one makes sense. I think it's a lot of money, but I think it's a pretty good price. I heard he was asking for more than $20 million, and that was before the salary cap bump. So he's definitely asking for over $20 million, and he might be worth it. He's pretty good, pretty young, really good run blocker, was fantastic in the playoffs two straight years. He's been a great addition for the Chiefs. Tackles are very valuable. So, but this is a pretty good number for both sides here. I think 19.994. They probably work on an extension. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say they tag him, which I already predicted, and I think the tag probably goes away then. I think they probably get an extension done before the July 15th date, which is a deadline to get the extensions done, and they have to sign the tag. I'd say they probably do that, and they'll spread out the cap hits, and he'll probably get a little more than $20 million per year. So, but predicting the tag at first while they work through some things, but who knows? Maybe they extend him before the tag has to happen. But this is my prediction here for the Chiefs and Orlando Brown Jr. Next up, to me, it's funny because on all the, who's the talk of the offseason when it comes to franchise tags? It's Lamar Jackson, it's Daniel Jones, it's Saquon Barkley. Who's going to get the tag for the Giants? I think, and there's some other guys being talked about, of course. But those are the main like talk about these guys are going to get tagged. To me, my opinion, we'll see what happens. This is kind of like in my opinion, the most obvious one to get tagged. He should get tagged. That's C.J. Gardner-Johnson, the standout defensive back of the Philadelphia Eagles this year, who they acquired from the Saints. So I'm going to predict he gets the non-exclusive tag, and that's $14.46 million. It's a good price for him. He's probably looking for a little bit more. So, he wanted that extension with the Saints. There was some frustration there, I guess. So could this rub him the wrong way? I think it's a pretty good number, but he's definitely going to be asking for a little bit more. But it just makes all the sense in the world to me. I mean, the Eagles are losing Jonathan Gannon. It's a unique scheme to use Gardner-Johnson. The Saints used him, I guess they moved him around a bit, but mainly he was a slot guy. Eagles used him, at both safety positions. We've seen him making plays in the back end as a free safety, and used him in a slot. They used him in man and zone coverage. He played both equally good, equally very solid. So he fit that scheme very well. Now they're going to have a new defensive coordinator, to be determined who it is. I'm talking about Vance Joseph. Besides the point, sorta. So is he going to fit? I'd say he's a good enough player where he does. But we got to see if he's kind of that same player, and where his value is at. Because if he's just a slot guy, then his value drops probably less than the 14.46. If he's a do-it-all type guy or a safety, then he's probably worth around this or more. So that's why it makes sense to tag him, have him play on the tag. Don't make any tough decisions on a long-term deal as him one of the higher-paid safeties, before you know what's going to happen. So the only issue is he might because he was unhappy with the Saints and not getting an extension. But I was thinking they were offering him less than this because they liked him mainly in the slot. I mean, some of the best slot guys, Mike Hilton gets underpaid, and I think he's maybe the best slot guy, and he does a little bit more. He blitzes a lot, but he just is an example of this. Just the slot guys, the nickel guys, they don't get paid much. They're underpaid. So, maybe he's unhappy with the franchise tag and this price and wants more. So maybe they have no choice but to extend him. I would strongly agree with franchise tagging him, and I would strongly agree with having him play on that franchise tag. They could actually tag Javon Hargrave, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which is different because he's a little up there in age. Usually it's younger guys that get the tag. But this is my prediction for the Eagles. To me, this is an obvious one, but we'll see. There's always surprises. Next, the Jags. Jags have a very tough decision, and we'll talk about Jawaan Taylor towards the end of this video, but it's a very tough decision. The price, again, we'll go into Taylor in a little bit more, but the price seems very high for Taylor. But if you start to think about it a little bit more, maybe it's not. And they had that surprise tag. At the time, it was surprising with Cam Robinson, but when I thought about it, it made some sense. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit here in this video. But I'm going to predict Evan Engram gets the non-exclusive tag, and that's 11.345 for that tight end there. And he was a big factor for them this season. I think this makes sense for both sides. I think it's pretty good value from the Jags. When you get $10 million last year, it's pretty good value for the Jags. It's pretty good value for Engram. I think he's worth around this, but it's also risky in a long-term deal paying him around this. And he could be asking for more because he could be like, hey, let me get $12 million because that kind of makes sense for me. But he's probably thinking the franchise tag isn't bad either because it's just under that and I can earn more. So I think both sides could want the tag. I guess the positive for the Jags on a long-term deal because they're in a little bit of a hole with the cap space right now, but they're going to cut Griffin and they're going to restructure some contracts, Christian Kirk, people like that. So they'll clear, but they are in a little bit of a hole. So if they, sign Evan Engram to like a 3-year deal, they can spread out those cap hits and help themselves this year. Perhaps it'll be the positive of signing him long term. And he was really a good weapon for them. But I do think the Jags and Doug Peterson's scheme can find a replacement. Somewhat easy, not to take anything away from Engram. But a 1 year, see if he can do this again type deal at a pretty good price. I'd say, again, you might ask for more on a long-term deal, but around this price on a long-term deal, I think is pretty risky. So I think both sides probably better off doing this tag, and that is a big reason why I'm predicting it. But they very well could tag Jawaan Taylor because even though it's expensive, but it is very risky. We'll talk about it, but interesting decision with the Jags, and they made an interesting decision at the time of tagging Cam Robinson last year. But the more if you watch our videos at that time, the more I thought about it, it made more sense, and I graded them after the fact. It made more sense. So, interesting. Raiders, and this is interesting too because this kind of goes against Josh McDaniels, like his beliefs, his philosophy, and they have Ziegler in there as a Patriots guy as well as their GM, and he's a big part of this decision as well, and it kind of just goes against the Patriots way, and it's And it's kind of been proven it's almost their way as well when it comes to running backs, because he had an option, fifth-year option at the decline. They declined last year. That was just over $8 million. That's a pretty good price for Josh Jacobs, but it's a big number, I suppose. And then he had a monstrous season because he's a monstrous running back that's only getting better, and he fit McDaniel's scheme so well because he's a power style runner that can be more than that, So now a tough decision, I guess for the Raiders, because this kind of goes against their normal thinking. And honestly, their normal philosophy, almost, even though they were bad this year, it kind of looked somewhat accurate. And what I mean by that is Josh Jacobs went bonkers this year. He went freaking nuts. He was the best running back in football this year. And they still stunk. They weren't that good. So they're, that's because the running back can't really, and he put him in position to win games, but it's not going to decide games, and that's kind of their thinking. So, but I'm going to predict them. It's a tough one, but I'm going to predict them to kind of go against their original beliefs because he was so damn dominant for them, because it feels like he's getting better. He's still young, because he's a great fit, and because $10.091 million is an absolute steal for a guy like Josh Jacobs. So really, they lose $2 million, maybe just a little bit under $2 million by not picking up that option and believing in their philosophy, but now going against it. So it is a little bit of a tricky one, but all signs, I suppose, kind of point towards this happening. And it does make sense, but like I kind of did, you kind of can argue why it doesn't make sense too, because it kind of goes against what McDaniels believes in there. So could they pass? I could see it. Could they? Because it's just their way, the Patriot way. Could they pass on it and have Zamir White and maybe another rookie or a cheap guy in free agency step up for them, and just focus on the passing game? It's possible. So interesting one there. Another running back, Tony Pollard. So this is a very interesting one. Another non-exclusive tag. This is very interesting because they have a decision to make, and we'll talk about Dalton Schultz a little bit more in a little bit, but they have an interesting decision to make between Tony Pollard and Dalton Schultz. That's a tough decision. And I think Tony Pollard getting injured actually shifted it. I think it still could be Schultz. It still could be Schultz, possibly. I'm predicting Pollard, but the injury kind of shifted it towards more likely to be Pollard, because a guy coming off that tough injury, you want to see him after the fact. Do you sign that guy to a long-term deal worth? And it would probably cost more than 10. It would. It'd probably cost 11, 11.5, 12. Pushing it, getting more than that per year though, million per year off the injury. So would you rather have a cheaper 10.091, which I think Pollard would be okay with? He's not going to hold out or anything. It's still pretty good amount of money for him, even though it's less than what he would ask per year. So he'd be good with that. That's a good price for the Cowboys. Off the injury, see what, kind of a 1 year prove it. Again, running backs, you'd rather have less years for those running backs sometimes. I know this guy's young. He's a stud, and I'm sure he's going to come back fine from that injury. But I think him getting injured might have shifted. Again, it still could be Schultz, but if he didn't get injured, I'd have Schultz. I'd predict Dalton Schultz, the tight end, to be getting the tag and then trying to work out something with Pollard long term. But this would be my prediction here. Another running back getting the tag. Cowboys do have a very tough decision to make. They're probably still thinking about it. And then one more franchise tag prediction before we go over some other guys that are candidates. But DAndre Payne is kind of 50-50 for me. I was kind of back and forth. Is he in? Is he out in terms of my prediction? But I'm predicting him to get the non-exclusive tag, and there's been some talks about them working on a long-term deal before they have to put the tag on him. And I was kind of thinking they were going to do that. And 18.937 is kind of pricey, but the way he played last year and how much the interior defensive linemen are getting paid, it's in the range for sure. It's not an overpay or anything like that, but they do have a lot of money invested on that defensive line. So it is tough, but they are trying to work out a deal. So I'm going to predict. This is actually very similar to my Geno Smith prediction. Like, it's kind of 50-50 on tag or they reach a deal before they have to tag. So either way, and then they quickly, my prediction ended up being the tag, they quickly get extended after the tag. So I'm going to predict the same thing. So I think he's going to stick around with the Commanders here, but it could go either way there. But if they do tag, it'll be a non-exclusive worth that 18, almost 19 million there. So that is an interesting one. I have heard that they've been working on a deal, but don't be surprised they put the tag on him first. and then go for there. So those are my predictions for who will get the franchise tag, and not every single thing's going to, and it's not going to be 100% accurate. There'll be some surprises probably, but I have this spreadsheet, and I have some more than just this spreadsheet for our Twitter subscribers, which will get bonus content, and I kind of filled in for them what's next, kind of prediction after the tag. Some guys end up being free agents, and then some notes I have in there as well. Some pretty cool stuff. But the in red, right above me, I'm kind of getting cut off, but right above me in red are the guys that I consider strong candidates as well. And there's more candidates than just this. I just don't expect them to get the tag. But these are strong candidates that I'm predicting not to get the tag. We'll talk about those guys real quick. The first one, Draymond Jones, who had a breakout year for the Denver Broncos, playing that 3-4 end role. He could get the non-exclusive tag. It would cost a whopping $19.727 million. I'm predicting no tag. It's one to watch because it's a big-time player that had a breakout year, and they don't want to let it. You don't want to have guys like that hit free agency. You don't want it to happen, but sometimes you have to. Even though he's a really good player, that's a bit pricey. That's a bit pricey, but you could say put the tag on him and then try to reach a long-term deal for less than that. Yeah, I guess that makes some sense. But if Draymond Jones, he might want the tag. Like that 19.727, that's pretty good payday for Draymond Jones. And he's not, I think he's worth less, but it's not too far off. But, he probably won't agree to get rid of the tag and get a new deal if it's less than that. He'll probably want that money. So that's why you almost get yourself stuck if you put the tag on him. And they currently don't have a defensive coordinator. Is he gonna? Because he's a 3-4 end to me. In a 4-3, he'd probably be a 4-3 end. But does he have the athleticism? I think he could play it. I don't think he'd be as good though. So tricky situation. There's more reasons to me that says stay away from the tag than otherwise. Javon Hargrave could get it from the Eagles, even though he's 30 years old. It would be 18.937. He's worth that. I don't think you give him that per year on a super long-term deal, but he's worth that on a tag for sure. I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is the clear-cut franchise tag. You only can use one, obviously, for the Eagles. And Hargrave, they have some replacements. Jordan Davis, a big reason they drafted him. So if they, they want him back. If they lose him in free agency, they have some replacements. So see what they can do on a kind of a long-term deal, whether it's 2 or 3 years or something like that. And then Juwan Taylor and the Jags, that's a tough decision. Like when we talked about Evan Engram, who was my prediction for the franchise tag for the Jaguars. It's a tough decision. And they could use neither. It's a possibility. There's kind of 3 ways there. They can go Evan Engram, which is my prediction. They can go Juwan Taylor, and they can go no tag to kind of save the money. They don't want to have all that cap hit on this year and then reach a long-term deal with those guys and spread out the cap hits, maybe backload it because they're a little bit of a hole right now. That's a possibility as well. But Juwan Taylor, right tackle, $18.244 million is what the non-exclusive tag would cost him, and that's it seems a little rich, right? Because Taylor is still kind of an upside guy. I think he's going to get paid way more than people think, and way more. And people will base it based on how he's played so far. It's been all right. Good young tackle, getting better. His best football is definitely ahead of him. So people will say, people are going to be surprised, I think, if he hits free agency. But yeah, it is a little much because when you're on the franchise tag, it's 1 year, right? So he has to be worth that $18.244 million this year. I think it's a little much. I think most people would agree with me. But the issue is there might be somebody, because people are desperate for tackles, and if he hits free agency, so obviously the Jags would look to be paying less than that, probably a bit less than that per year when they're trying to get him back in free agency if they don't tag him. There's going to be somebody out there. I look at a team like that as a whopping cap space number and who needs a right tackle badly, like the Chicago Bears. They might pay more than that. They might pay more than the tag even, or something that the Jags just simply won't or can't pay. So maybe they'll be saying, you fast forward to free agency, they didn't tag him, and somebody pays more than that, and they probably go, damn, we should have tagged him for that price because he just got more than that. And now we can't get him back. So this is too expensive, but for a 1 year thing for just this year. But it's tough. Jags got a tough situation here, so very curious to see what they do. Mike McGlinchey can get the tag at the same price, and A little more of a veteran, a little more polished than Taylor. I still think that's a little much. I think he's a little inconsistent. Really good run blocking tackle. He was injured not this past year, the year before too. And he's not far off of being worth that. But the Niners are so good at developing and coaching these guys up that I think if they lost him, or they can get him back for cheaper, one. But if they lost him, I think they can get a replacement that's a lot cheaper, and they'll still probably be a pretty good football team. So They could put the tag on him because they want to keep that dominant tackle duo. Maybe dominant's a little strong. Trent Williams is dominant, but because if he hits free agency, somebody might outbid them. But it's one of those guys. He's good and he can help a team, but he might not be as good away from the 49ers. So a tricky situation there. Tremaine Edmonds, I have a different tag there. I have the transition tag, and that's at $17.478 million. And this very possibly can happen. And the transition tag is the cheapest tag. What's the difference between that and your normal tag, non-exclusive? Not only that it's cheaper, but teams can negotiate with them like the non-exclusive tag, but say on the non-exclusive tag, somebody negotiates and signs a guy. Then the original team that put the non-exclusive tag can match that offer. Transition tag can match it as well. Say the team on the non-exclusive, I'm not explaining this the best way. Say the team that slapped the non-exclusive on a guy doesn't want to match. The other team signs them, and they send 2 first-round picks to that team. So it's almost a trade if a team matches on a non-exclusive. On a transition, it's basically like he's a free agent still. It's basically like he's a free agent. They don't get the draft picks there, so they slap the tag on him. It'd be $17.478 million, and then teams will think about it. We'll give you this amount, if you agree to it, and then we'll see if the Bills match. Things like that, and then the Bills kind of lose him if it's a good price for Tremaine Edmonds, and they don't match it, obviously. But so I guess it's very similar to just being a free agent. But I think the positive for the Bills here, I think a 1-year $17.478 million is a pretty good deal for Tremaine Edmonds. It's pretty pricey, but I think it's pretty good for both sides. The Bills kind of get that 1 year prove it, because he's probably going to be asking for around that range, which is probably more than where he's played, but he's got a lot of upside. But if you sign him long-term, it's a little more risky doing that. So if you get a 1 year with that price, maybe that price kind of scares other teams away. So then you have him for 1 more year, and you have the opportunity to match deals. So if somebody gives him a deal, and I like the Bills go out, we like that deal, we're going to match it, and then there you go, you have him. So I think there's a little bit more benefits than just being a free agent, even though you get no picks if he's gone here in this case. So why not the non-exclusive tag, which I can't fully rule out, but it's over $20 million. It's pretty expensive for Tremaine Edmonds. I don't know if it's necessary or it should be done. Maybe I'm a big Edmonds guy though. I think he's, if you're going to pay him that much, then just go ahead and pay him that much on a long-term deal. Don't slap the tag on him, have a 1 year full cap hit of that. So interesting, kind of a different situation with Tremaine Edmonds there, who we'll have some takers in free agency. I like the Steelers and the Giants for him specifically. Jesse Bates would be on the second tag. That would pay $15.493, 120% up from last year. I'm going to predict no tag though. The Bengals might use that money elsewhere. They might already be preparing for life. They've already done maybe life without Jesse Bates. They'll put Daxton Hill in that role, perhaps, who they drafted in the first round last year. Maybe they tag him and they keep him around again. He wasn't really happy with the tag last year. This is a little bit more money, but I don't know if both sides want this. I think he'll be a free agent. I think we could see him going elsewhere. And then Dalton Schultz would be his second tag, so it'd be a little more expensive than the other tight end we talked about, Evan Engram. It's around $11 million. Dalton Schultz would be $13.117 million. And it's a lot of money, but it's a pretty good price for a solid tight end there in Dalton Schultz. A tough decision between Pollard and Schultz. I think Pollard getting hurt made it more likely that the Cowboys want a 1 year deal with him at a pretty good price at $10 million. So therefore they can't tag Schultz because you only can tag one guy. It's definitely possible they tag Schultz still, but it's a tough situation because every time good tight ends hit free agency, there's always that team that pays a lot of money. It's like, wow. So then maybe there's a team that pays like $15 million per year for Dalton Schultz, and the Cowboys we can't do that. And then they lost their star tight end there. So tough decision there. And then Saquon Barkley, which the Giants Probably wanted to slap the non-exclusive tag on him because it's a pretty damn good deal, and it's a 1-year deal. Prove that he can stay healthy, and then we give you the long-term deal after that, perhaps. Just 1 year at a good price just makes sense for running backs, but they probably wanted to do that, but Daniel Jones is playing hardball, and they're most certainly not going to pay him around 40, and you're even talking about $45 million per year on a long-term deal. And there are some benefits to having Daniel Jones on a prove-it deal, on a 1-year prove-it deal there. But originally they probably did want Barkley. And like the Cowboys, they probably did want Schultz on the tag, but Pollard got injured, making it a little more likely that he gets the tag. So those are my takes. Twitter subscribers get this spreadsheet with some more info on it under the What's Next. And they have some other spreadsheets too. They get bonus content. There's a link pinned in the comments for our Twitter subscribers. If you subscribe on Twitter, you can follow, but if you subscribe on Twitter, you get even more content. But yeah, that wraps this video up. The window has opened 5 minutes ago. I talked for that long. And we have you guys covered for every single thing NFL, not only here on our channel, but on our Twitter as well. Any link you're looking for, pin in the comments. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn those notifications on. That's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.